Okay, so this time we are reading The Kite Runner by Khalid Khalid Husseini. There you go. And
Okay, so I have some questions. My first one is, two important characters have grown up without their mothers. Amir's mother died while giving birth to him, but Hassan's mother ran away. So how do you think the lack of closure has made their experiences growing up different without mothers, like other than like the major difference in wealth?
I feel like for the main character, he doesn't get along with his dad very much because he's very like non-masculine, and his dad really expects him to be very strong and masculine, but he likes to write stories, and yeah, so I feel like he has a hard time without his mom for that reason.
adding on to Kayla's, yes, I feel like the lack of having a mother, you don't have that same sensitivity that one would, because in their culture you have to be a man, you have to be strong, you can't cry, you can't show many emotions. And since he is basically kind of like disobeying those rules, it's a little bit more frustrating to his dad. Also, even if they did have his mother in the book, even if she was in the story, they would still not be the best because they didn't marry into royalty. So it could have been a little bit better, but they would still be shunned by society in a way.
Okay. The second question I have is, the time period has like a big impact on the story. Do you think the political atmosphere around this time is impacting their day-to-day life, like indirectly or more directly, like it affects them and them personally, or just like the overall how it affects them?
As we got like towards the end of the section that we were finishing, it started with the father and the son leaving because of like the war that was happening, and they had to flee from the place that they were living. So I feel like it's gonna affect them more so towards like later in the book more than it did in the beginning.
I completely agree. I don't have anything to add on.
So for one of the themes I found lots of themes involving power. So the rape in the story connects the theme that power is not only physical, like strength or wealth, but it's extremely psychological. In what ways do you see similarities to like the psychological aspects of the rape to the everyday life of these people in the book?
Can you read it again?
Yeah, okay, so basically like how would you compare the rape, like where do you see the symbolism of the rape in like other places in the story, if you do?
So I feel like since his friend saw him getting raped, that like, and he like had the kite with him while he was getting raped, I feel like that like symbolizes part of like the title of the book, because I don't know, like will always remind him of that situation.
And also, the thing that going back to masculinity, I feel like the rape kind of it didn't fully represent it, but it had some aspect of it. Like he was saying like how much of a coward he was for running away and just stuff like that. So get my drift.
So what do you think the kite symbolizes, or if it does symbolize anything in general? Is it like more of a nostalgic thing, or does it bring guilt?
say it represents his innocence in a way because like those kites kind of like they were there and his innocence were kind of like slowly drifting away. Like during the war, he had this kite when he was trying to get his father's acceptance. The kite was involved with it because his father used to be with the kite, and then when his friend got raped, it was there with him. So I feel like that the kite represented his innocence slipping away.
I kind of feel like it represents guilt because he, like with his friend, like that's kind of like their slave almost. Like they do the work for them because they are wealthy, and it was there when his friend got raped and he never said anything, and he didn't say anything to his dad when he asked what was wrong with him, and he continued to do things until they said that they had to leave, which really upset his father. And so I feel like since he had a hard time getting acceptance from his father, he like made it worse by causing them to leave, which made his dad really upset.
Yeah. So there's like a short part in the book where his son is describing himself, and one of the things he uses to describe himself is his cleft lip. And cleft lips, they're known like to show like that a person lives in poverty. So with him using this to describe himself, what do you think it shows about him individually and how their society looks at people?
I feel like it kind of shows that if you do not have like money to get like plastic surgery, kind of like in today's society, how you always have to look the way people want you to, and so if you don't have the money to get a surgery to fix the way you look, that you're not good, you know? I guess.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I think it just shows that when you look at a person physically, he still goes back to, oh, I don't have money, so I look different, which is kind of sad, but happens, and that's all I have.
Okay, so a lot of things that I quoted, Adina has mentioned already. Like the first part is when he was describing his friend. The first part that I chose was the first paragraph because that kind of stood out to me because it says that I became what I am today at the age of 12 on a frigid overcast of the day in the winter of 1975. I remember the precise moment crouching behind a crumbling mud walls, peeking into the alley near the frozen creek. This was a long time ago, but it's wrong what they say about the past. I've learned, but how you can bury it because the past claws its way out. Looking back, I realized I've been peeking into the desert alley for the last 26 years. That alley, at first when you read it, you don't know what the alley is until later on, and he's like running away from the alley. So it's like he's still running away from his past. So yeah, and that just like kind of stood out for me because of all the, like how he just wrote it, and it's really nice. And then in the beginning of chapter 2, when he was describing his friend Hassan, just how he's describing him, it's he on his almost perfect round face, a face like a China doll, is christened from hardwood. His flat, broad nose slanting narrow like bamboo leaves, eyes that look deepening in the light, gold, green, even sapphire. I can see his tiny low set ears and that pointed stub of chin with the meaty appendage that looks like it was added a mere afterthought. In a cliff flip, just have left a middle line where the Chinese doll maker instrument may have slipped, or perhaps he has grown tired and careless. So just describing him, it was just like, he kind of just looked a little, I feel like he was kind of like describing him like a type of god, because like you're like I felt like he was. I don't know about you guys. It's like so much detail into one person. Usually they don't go into detail that much unless it actually means something. And I feel like just how beautiful and how like a China doll, it's so sensitive that anything can break it. And I feel like the rape represents the breakage later on, and it's like he's no longer this perfect China doll. What else do I have? Right here. So on page 21, I cried all the way. Like they were at a horse race, and this is representing the masculinity that I was talking about before. I began to cry. I cried all the way back home. I remember how Baba's hand clenched around the steering wheel, clenched and unclenched. Mostly, I will never forget Baba's valiant efforts to conceal the disgusted look on his face as he drove in silence. And I feel like how I said before, the masculinity, you can't show emotion. He couldn't even show that he was, like he felt grief. He put it on a person that really just got hurt. And it just shows how he's more sensitive. Like I cried while his dad just kind of like kept it inside. And you can see the big difference of them. And then around chapter 6, I think. Yeah, chapter 6. Continuing with the father, he wants his father approval so bad. And here's an excerpt from it. Baba smoked his pipe and talked. I pretended to listen, but I couldn't listen, not really, because Baba's casual little comment had planted a seed in my head. The resolution I would win that winter tournament. I was going to win. There's no other option. And I feel like he's just trying to prove to his father that I'm good enough. I'm not this little weak thing. And it's just like, it sucks because he really wants his father's approval. And since he doesn't have his mother, he doesn't really get to enjoy the feminine side of him, like I would say. So yeah, and another thing, their innocence is a really big play in the book. I really focus on the innocence because so slowly as the book goes on, you can see the little pieces that keep on letting go. Right here on page 36, we stayed huddled that way until the early hours of the morning. The shooting and the explosions has lasted an hour, but they frightened us badly, and none of us have ever heard gunshots in the streets. They were foreign sounds to us then. The generation of Afghana children whose ears would know nothing but the sounds of bomb and gunfire was not yet born. And it's like that reflects on before everything got into mad chaos. And it's just like they still had their innocence, but they were slowly slipping away because of those gunshots and that violence around them. And they would never get to hear another, like that was the first time they knew that something was wrong. Right here, page 70, more with the innocence thing, page 75, when his friend Hassan finally, I would say, just basically, he got raped and it was so horrible. And then it says, like, the guy that raped him snapped and said, all I want you weaklings to do is hold him down, can you manage that? Wiley and Kamal nodded, they looked at Elise. Hasif knelt down behind Hassan, put his hand on Hassan's hip and lifted his bare buttocks, and keeping one hand on Hassan's back and undid his own buckle belt with his free hands. He unzipped his jeans, dropped his underwear, and positioned himself behind Hassan. Hassan didn't struggle, he didn't whimper, he moved his head slightly, and I caught a glimpse of his face and saw the recognition in it, and it looked like I've seen it before. It was a look I've seen it before. It was the look of the lamb. And I feel like the look was the frightenness and the lack of, like the moment where like that he knows that he lost his innocence and he can never go back to how he was before a couple minutes ago. And it's really hard, and I hate that part. Last one is about heritage and like how they're proud of it, because like their religion and their heritage is a really big part of this, because so many of their elements that has in this book is because of their heritage.